Jordan Karp is in and would be considered a Democratic political operative. Are you okay with that?
I've been called worse.
Yeah, that's true. I wouldn't know that. I'm just assuming that you've been called worse. We've all been called worse. You also are working on Joe Marino's campaign for mayor in the city of Utica. And you are also with one of the commissioners of the Board of Elections, and no longer are, but have a great deal of knowledge there.
I was there for 3 years.
So what's all of this stuff going on? Hennessy, I think people would be surprised to know, Hennessy is asking for a debate right now with Tony Picenti. And he's a Democrat who wants to be on the line, if you will, on the conservative line, but it's not quite that way, right? He wouldn't even end up on the ballot. Is that true?
Well, this is one of the quirks of New York State election law. So the way you get on the line, if you're not a registered member of that party, is you have to be endorsed by that party. So right now, Tony Picenti got enough signatures, was endorsed by the Conservative Party, and so he will appear on the line on June 25th. Now, there was an effort by members of the Conservative Party, which this is how that process has to work, and they've done what's called an opportunity to ballot. An opportunity to ballot just creates a primary where one does not exist. So the petition is different. There's no candidate on that petition. They have to go out and get the same number of signatures as you would to get on the line otherwise. And so what they've created is a primary where Tony Picenti's name will actually be on the Conservative Party line in the primary, and there will also be an opportunity to write in.
So what's interesting here, and what I didn't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, that during the general election, this is always a big story during the presidential race, where Mickey Mouse gets written in, Donald Duck, who knows? Anybody can be written in. But in a primary, it's a much different situation. This is a closed event. It's closed, well, it's changing a lot.
You can still vote for Mickey Mouse, but only Conservative Party registered members of the Conservative Party can vote in the election.
Okay.
So Ivanka Trump could technically win, right? They would. You have to sign an acceptance.
That'd be
if you were to
something if
win.
you did.
Well, yeah, but
yeah, anybody could win.
Anybody could win. You could win.
But by having this opportunity to vote, if he's successful, that means anyone can vote in that conservative.
No, so in the primary on Tuesday, again, Tony Picenti's name will be on the ballot. He's the only name on the ballot.
Right.
Conservative Party members will be able to go into the polling place, vote for Tony Picenti, or write somebody in. But so if Mike Hennessy were to win the write-in, then his name would appear on the Conservative Party line in November.
Got it. Okay.
But he'd have to win the write-in primary, essentially. So Tony's name is the only one on the ballot, but it's created a primary where one does not exist. Is what the opportunity to ballot does.
So my question, where I'm confused still, and I know you'll clear this up, is what if Hennessy didn't go through this process and Picenti gets 80 votes, and Hennessy, without going through the petition for opportunity to ballot, he got 81
But there'd be no primary in that case, right? So there would not. So for example,
right, if Picenti's the only one on the ballot, it's there
Mike
would be a
Hennessy.
primary.
I'm a Democrat who lives in
Understood.
Hartford. I don't have an election on Tuesday because Mike Hennessy is the only registered Democrat who submitted petitions, right? So
now I get
there
it.
would be no primary in that case.
So this basically forces a primary,
correct?
Which then gives the opportunity for people to write in names.
Correct.
Boy, it took me a while to figure that out.
Welcome to the New York State statute.
And it's all gotten so much more confusing with the latest new rules.
Well, and we have early vote now in starting the general election this year. So that's going to be a process and a learning curve. And I'm very glad I'm no longer Commissioner of Elections.
Yeah. Can you explain the conservative side? On the Democratic side, it's different because, for instance, in the Utica mayoral race, Palmieri and Marino are both Democrats, or it's different because they're a primary party?
No, because they're both registered members of the Democratic Party.
They both got the signatures that are properly needed.
So, in other words, I'll use real people examples here. So no one who's running for county executive is a registered member of the Conservative Party, okay? So candidates screen, the Conservative Party goes out and says, okay, Tony Picenti is our endorsed candidate. They have to submit paperwork to the Board of Elections saying, we attest that we had a meeting, we voted, we endorse Tony, and he has to go out and get the petitions and then say, I accept their endorsement. So that 3-part process, right? If there was a registered conservative also running, all they would have to do is go out and get the signatures. They don't need the party endorsement. They don't need to go through any of that because they're a registered member of that party.
And that number, by the way, registered conservatives in the area is a low number.
I think it's don't take. I think it's 4,000 or 5,000 maybe in the county, maybe. Mm-hmm. So yeah. And it's obviously a cost because the Board of Elections has to print ballots for every election district. Even when there is not registered members of the Conservative Party in that election district, you have to have ballots there.
So this battle going on right now is to prevent Pisani's appealing. Do we know when we'll get a decision on that? It's got to come soon.
For Hennessy on the Democratic line, I don't know.
So that's the Democratic
line. I believe that's the Democratic line.
So the Conservative line is dead.
The Tuesday will decide who's going to have the Conservative Party line in November.
Okay.
Yes.
So Pisani will be on the ballot.
Pisani will be on the ballot, but
Hennessy will not. But people can write in.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And that's that could have some major effects on this race.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who counted those ballots, right? People's handwriting is terrible. I mean, there's a whole variety of issues that sort of arise.
Oh, right. Like if you spelled Mike wrong or something like that.
Well,
it would be
chances are they'd be spelling Hennessy wrong.
Right.
I was just going to say that's kind of a difficult name to.
Or if someone writes Mike
spell.
M. How do you decide it?
Right. Or if like I was saying, if someone spells Mike wrong, like if it looks like Mark Hennessy, it's not Mike Hennessy.
Right. But even Hennessy alone is a tough name to spell.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
and there's nothing
if someone
really,
spells it wrong, does it get thrown out? Or
so
is it?
It depends. Is the answer to that question? I've counted some votes in some opportunity ballot primaries, and basically, if you can get the gist of who they're talking about, we say, okay, this is this is what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
But if they said Mike M, I don't think you count it.
It's kind of hard to figure out.
That's just me. I thank goodness I don't have to make those decisions anymore.
I believe Dave Gordon is making a push for the conservative votes as well.
Right, but he's not on the ballot.
No one except for Tony.
Hennessy.
So they have to write his name in.
So I'm sure he is. I mean, that would be a way to sneak in on the ballot in November if he were to lose the Republican primary. So, Andrew.
So essentially, too, is that Mike Hennessy basically did the work for everybody else who would potentially want to try and get on that conservative line.
Yeah,
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, you could win the election, that primary technically, right? And you didn't do a thing for it.
Well, and just to be clear, and I don't know if you know this, I was kind of told that actually maybe some leaders of the party or somebody I think you're very familiar with maybe were the ones who circulated the petitions to open that up. It wasn't necessarily Mike Hennessy. You just put out a blank petition.
The opportunity to ballot petition is different than a normal petition that you would see in an election. It doesn't have a candidate's name on it because you're just creating a write-in primary. But you have to have 3 members of the party in the political jurisdiction. So you have to have 3 members of the Conservative Party, registered conservatives in Oneida County. You can have 2 guys from Brooklyn and 1 guy from Manhattan, right? And they're in the election law. They're designated as the Committee to Receive Notices, is what they're called. So there's no candidate on the ballot. It just says it basically allows a few members of the party to say, hey, look, our party endorsed somebody else, but we don't like that process, and we're going to open this up to a write-in primary. Now, the party could have said, we're going to give all 3 of these people the endorsement and let them fight it out in a primary.
Yeah.
They did not do that. They endorsed Tony Pisani.
I have another expert in the field who is telling me there are 2,000 conservatives in Oneida County.
I was off by 100%.
Yeah, it's which is a small number when you think about it. However, those 2,000 people, you got to wonder how many are going to come out on this primary. How many have been educated to be inspired to write in, and you want to make sure everybody's efforts are all in one area. Otherwise, it dilutes it, and Pisani ends up. This really is a tough position.
It is,
right
and there's a little quirk of New York State election law where if you have a primary that's under 5,000 people, if there were no other races going on that day, they could actually only have one polling location if they
Wow.
chose.
Wow.
That's not what they're doing because every other location will be open.
Will be
because
open
they're
anyway.
going to have a Republican primary countywide anyway. But yeah, think about another layer of confusion there.
Yeah.
Have one polling location.
All right, Board of Elections gets a report that that someone produced a television commercial, and I want to preface this by the fact mentioning the fact that you are working on Marino's campaign. But I think we all know the answer to this. If you have produced a television commercial and you've taped part of it inside a government building, like, let's say City Hall, that's the issue that's at hand. Bill Morehouse was taped in front of his office in City Hall.
Did he confirm that?
He confirmed it, and I looked at it, and it's other than the chance that you took an illegal photo. You can't even use a photo from City Hall. So that's my understanding. Am I correct with that? What are your thoughts?
So that's not a Board of Elections function. So Board of Elections couldn't take, their ministerial board of Elections. So they couldn't go out and sanction Bill Morehouse or say this, or write an opinion saying this was wrong. It's more of probably an ethics board in the city of Utica.
Okay.
I don't know if there is an ethics board anymore in the city of Utica. But
there was, but
I don't know how functional it is or whatever. But
there was a controversy over it. It got very unethical, and they just stopped doing the whole thing.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
It was crazy.
So that'd probably be a issue for the ethics board of the city of Utica.
So, and who's really responsible? It would be the campaign, right?
I would think. I've never filmed inside a government building. When I've oftentimes you'll think you see a classroom. I'll pull the curtain behind for people. You think you're in a public school classroom, usually at a private college.
Yeah.
Because you can't get into school to
film.
Right.
Although I got to tell you, I have to, and I didn't do this during the campaign, but Bob Cardillo had a commercial that he was running when he was running for a school board. And you oftentimes will grab stock footage, and clearly they grabbed some stock footage. This probably came from YouTube. But the funny part is in his commercial, and if you look at it, Bob, if you look at your own commercial, you're going to see it. All the writing on the wall was in Russian. So my guess is they were either trying to say, look how diverse Utica is, or they grabbed a piece of Russian stock photo.
Hey, maybe he's trying to grab those,
the
those
Bosnians
big Putin voters that are pro-Putin voters in Utica.
All right, so we've obviously there's a lot here and a lot of rules and regulations. When you see Pacenti challenging to prevent Hennessy from having this opportunity on the conservative ballot, Hennessy was on the air and really felt that this was improper for him to impede the
challenge is on the Democratic
line.
On the Democratic line, yeah. but even any of that challenge. So let's say it's the Democratic challenge. But even that, it's pretty typical, though, right, for campaigns to challenge.
Listen, here's what I tell people. When I was, the Democratic commissioner of the Board of Elections, I was popular twice. My first day on the job and the day after I left. And in between, everybody hates you.
Right.
You have to make some unpopular decisions, and you just, it's just part of the gig, and it's really terrible.
Yeah.
Morehouse texted in just a few moments ago to say, he said, "I'm not the candidate, but I don't think that matters. It's a campaign commercial for Rob Palmieri. It's Palmieri's commercial."
I believe it would be absolutely right. It's Palmieri's commercial, Bill. I hate to say this. Bill Morehouse is always right, except for this time. Okay, Bill, you're wrong on this. It doesn't matter. You just can't. It's his commercial. He cannot have footage from within a government building, let alone the building that you work in. It's the people. It's almost as if the people are endorsing. And that is improper. It's using taxpayer dollars to endorse a candidate.
I mean, you'd never see a member of Congress endorse another candidate from the House floor.
No. Listen, you've seen it. They're carrying around two cell phones, for God's sakes. They can't make a phone call from their government office for campaign issues. You can't use the same email address. I mean, it is, and I understand that's federal or even statewide, but still,
that's
all the way down to local races, it is the way it should be. You shouldn't use your public office for that. And I don't think this is an enormous deal. I don't think there's anything in place that's going to be imposing any sort of a fine by any means. However, it's just something we all know you don't do.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, thank you for that. Anything else you want to add on this confusion
No, it's just confusing.
It is, yeah. So there are people out being petitioned, quote unquote, petitioned right now, advertised to, encouraged. If you're you're pretty important right now. If you're if you are a registered conservative, chances are you're getting mail pieces. Chances are you're getting phone calls encouraging you to get out there and vote for either Hennessy or Dave Gordon or who knows, or somebody
absolutely.
else.
It's
or Tony Piccioni.
Those 2,000 people have some level of power in June, which they normally don't. Right, and that's the other thing is that there's normally not a primary in June, A, to begin with, and B, there's normally not a conservative party primary.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, I don't know what turnout will look like, but we'll see, I guess, on
It's going to be
Tuesday
interesting.
night.
Okay. This has certainly been one of the most controversial primary campaigns any of us have ever seen.
It's
dirtiest any of us have ever seen.
It's been interesting.
It's been something.
Yeah, it has.
Jordan Karp, as always, thank you.
Thank you.
Very interesting insight. Jeff in Utica, quickly before I break on the topic. Good morning, Jeff.
Well, morning, Bill. I got a couple of observations for you, though. Number one, about Bill Morehouse. Now, if Morehouse is in Palmieri's commercial recommending him from City Hall, does that mean that other candidates like Gordon can film their commercials in City Hall?
That's a good question. So if you are not an employee, so Gordon is not an employee of the city or of the county, he would not. It's still probably improper to do it in a government building.
You're not from what I'm thinking.
Hold on. Two commercials out. One where he's in there, and then one for Palmieri where he's just out in the park. Why make the second commercial if the first commercial was okay?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that.
I just know that from what I know, you just shouldn't be filming. Political ads inside of government buildings.
And have you noticed Dave Gordon's commercial?
I did hear that he has a commercial out now, right?
Oh yeah, he straightens that tie in that commercial with authority. He looks in the mirror and he's like got this gleam in his eye. And
it's
the
a
funny
TV
thing
spot or
about the
YouTube?
commercial is down, where it says "paid for by friends to elect Dave Gordon." It doesn't actually say that. It says "paid for friends to elect Dave Gordon." So does that mean he's paying people to vote for him?
You're saying the disclaimer says what?
It says "paid for friends to elect Dave Gordon," not "paid for by friends to elect Dave Gordon."
I'm assuming that would be a typo, but it does imply that he's paid friends to. I get
or
what
paid
you're
for
saying.
friends, which
paid
I have
for
to
friends. Do. Yeah, that's right. Hey, I'll buy dinner if you go out. You guys want to go out tonight? I'll buy. Okay, Jeff. Very funny. I got to look for that. I didn't realize that.
I'm serious.
That
is that
typo.
a TV ad or is that an online, like a social media?
It's a TV spot. It plays. It's in regular rotation on KTV and the other local channels.
Okay, interesting. Okay, Jeff. Thanks, man.
You're welcome.
Have a great day. Well, there you go. Thank you, Jordan.
Wonderful.